Since we began this podcast, my partner and I have seen some weird things. I mean, we have seen some weird things. Monsters, robots, even a time-traveling ghost. But actual aliens from another planet? Well, Joseph and I were on a whole other level now.
What do we do?
Just stay calm. We'll let them make the first move.
What if that move is to kill us?
Joseph glanced at me, then over at his camp for anything we could use in our defense. He nodded to a wrought iron poker that he'd been using to turn logs over in his fire pit. It wasn't exactly my bacillard, but it would do. I nodded, understanding that I'd go for the poker if things got violent. But fortunately, the situation remained calm. Eerily calm, though. My partner and I stayed where we were and said nothing, letting the Strangels examine us with their bioluminescent eyes. And you better believe we gave them a good looking over as well. The warm light of dawn, now inching over the horizon, began to sculpt their figures from the darkness, and we beheld our otherworldly visitors in full. There were 4 of them, a pair of males and a pair of females. One of the women was a couple of steps in front of the others. I wondered if she was their leader, but then, when she clapped her wings shut and the others did likewise, I knew she was their leader. Their wings. They didn't fold down, but rather steepled together upon their backs. Because this town had nicknamed them Strangels, I worry that the listener has been imagining them with the plumed pinions of the cherubim. This was not so. Their sails were not feathered like birds, but rather membranous like butterflies. And just like butterflies, the wings were dotted and striped with intricate patterns of color, each pair having a design as unique as fingerprints. The exotic physicality of these beings was incredible, but the clothing that concealed it was no less so. It was all clearly handmade, tailored to the exact specifications of the wearer. Each Strangel was garbed in some manner of vaguely medieval, sleeveless surcoat, open on the sides and in the back, yet cinched at the waist by a thick belt of some hardy, leathery material, the same material with which their knee-high boots had been crafted, and into which all of them kept their leggings tightly tucked. Beyond the lighted eyes, colorful wings, and fantastical outfits, they were more or less human in appearance, even reflecting our own racial varieties. With a big enough coat and a pair of sunglasses, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart from some rando on the street. It was then that I noticed that none of them bore weapons or carried supplies. How they had been surviving in our world, I couldn't say, or even ask.
How are we supposed to talk to them?
I have no idea.
Maybe one of them has that gift of language you were telling me about?
If they do, they're not using it.
I don't suppose Gentry recorded any of their language in his book, right?
How do you know of Gentry?
What in the...
Did that chick just say something in our language?
I was instructed in the Defender's tongue. I speak it fluently.
Wow. Okay. Well, around here we call it English, but, whatever.
I repeat myself. How do you know of Gentry?
I am in possession of his manuscript and 2 others like it. Why have you come here?
Jonas Gentry saved my world. Now he has sent me to save yours.
This is the Endless Elsewhere podcast, Chapter 9, The Prophecy and the Pledge. Noticing the increasing light of day coming over the roof, I tactfully suggested we go inside before someone saw us. The Strangel leader agreed and nodded to her companions, then the winged people cautiously followed Joseph and I downstairs. Once in the former lobby of the bank, what was now Joseph's library, we resumed our stances from the roof. Joseph and I on one side, the Strangels on the other, all defensively poised. As before, it was their leader who stood out in front. She was only slightly taller than I, which is no impressive feat, mind you, and her tousled red hair hung to either side of her lovely but austere face. It was only then that I noticed the light of her eyes and the colors of her wings were not as vibrant as that of her companions. What that signified, I would not learn until later. For now, we had other matters to discuss. Joseph and I began with our names, which we offered in the hope that they would reciprocate. But it was only their leader who spoke.
My name is Maevalesse. My companions do not speak the Defender's tongue, nor have any been gifted with the universal language.
So you'll be doing all the talking. Got it. What's with this Defender's tongue thing?
The Ariels called Gentry the Defender. Some of them learned our language. That's also why she's simulating our accent. She was taught by an American. Ugh, leave me alone.
Work?
Yeah.
Do you need to go?
And miss this? I don't think so.
Okay, Maeva. What was your name?
Maevalesse.
Right, sorry. Do you mind if I call you May?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So, you said Gentry sent you here, which How is that even possible? Wouldn't he be long dead at this point?
Their world conditions are conducive to far longer lifespans than we have here on Earth. It's discussed in the manuscripts.
Really? Good for them.
It occurred to me that our guests, all of whom were clearly in their prime, were likely older than they appeared, or older than they would have been by earthly standards.
So you're gonna save our world, huh? How? When? From what? I have all the questions.
There are those among my people with the gift of prophecy.
And now this podcast is into prophecies. All things considered, I guess I should have seen it coming. Get it, Joseph? Did you see what I did there?
This is of the utmost seriousness.
Sorry. Sometimes I joke around when I'm nervous. Please, May, continue.
My people were given visions of a coming cataclysm, of a ruined city, but it was not a city of our world. Gentry knew it, however.
He recognized the description of it because he once lived here.
In Circle City.
The only way by which this catastrophe may be averted is to thwart it before the start. We were sent here to give this warning to those who would hear it, those who would tell others. We were instructed to look for an article from our world, and to recognize it as a sign.
A sign of what?
That we had discovered allies.
An article from your world. Do you mean the breastplate? We just found that the other day, and we're lucky that we even did.
We were meant to, Lindsay. It was foreseen.
Okay, can we pump the brakes on the fortune-telling, please?
It's not fortune-telling. Prophecy is simply history that has not yet come to pass.
That sounds like... Are you talking about... I thought we weren't getting into the Dreamcatcher yet.
What is the Dreamcatcher?
We already know of the apocalypse your people saw coming to Circle City.
Your people were given their own visions?
Sorta. It's hard to explain. You see, there's this thing. This device. It's a communication device. This one is special, however, as it can only communicate with itself, which, saying that out loud, I realize it doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's see, okay. Think of the device as two different devices. There is the one that exists here and now, in our present, and then there is its future self. Well, by the use of these things that we call tachyon particles, information can be transmitted from its future self to its past self.
I do not comprehend this.
It's a prophecy machine. There. Keep it simple, Joseph.
A machine that foretells the future? This is abominable. This is blasphemy.
You're not wrong.
Are you in possession of this device?
That's not important. What matters is that I was once sent a story that came from this device. A story of what will happen to Circle City in the future. But we've been trying to avoid discussing it on this podcast.
What is podcast?
It's nothing. It's nothing. Never mind. Forget it. And forget about the Dreamcatcher. I told you that I possessed Gentry's manuscript as well as two others like it. The third one took place largely on your world, which... Did Gentry not speak of these books? He wrote the second and was featured in the third.
He had his doubts the documents would survive.
Well, they did. All three were passed around for decades before they eventually fell to me. Was my profession to publish these kinds of stories for everyone to read. The Pendergast manuscripts, like the Dreamcatcher device, speak of these future events that your people were shown.
We came to inform you of these things, but if I am understanding what I am hearing, you know more than even we.
We know that in ancient times a race of abominations left the earth and traveled to your world by the use of the orb, but then became stranded there. We know that in the ages since, they built a pair of spacecraft that would return them to their homeworld, back to Earth. Only one of them successfully launched from your planet, but it is now en route to the Earth. We also know that there are people here on Earth who will prepare the way for their arrival. The destruction of Circle City that your people foresaw, it will be caused by the humans I speak of.
Why would these people do this?
These humans do not understand the true nature of the giants. They see them as gods and will obey them as such. Humans served them in our ancient past, as well as your ancient past. You've seen this firsthand on your world. The Atlanteans, the humans who came through the portal with the giants so long ago, were their subjects, yes? Well, the creatures will have a whole new generation of subjects waiting for them when they finally make their return.
These people,
We call them the Cabal.
how will they do the things you say?
A signal was detected here in Circle City long ago. This was traced back through the cosmos to a nearing spacecraft, what the Cabal have codenamed the Argosy. They also realize that this vessel is on an automated flight path because its passengers are in stasis.
The ship is flying itself because everyone aboard is sleeping.
Thank you, Lindsay. Yes, exactly. What she said. But this signal indicates that the ship, The Argosy is going to land itself right here in Circle City decades from now. Before that can happen, however, the Cabal is going to inflict a series of horrors on this place in order to get everyone out of here, clearing the way for their coming overlords.
If all of this is so, if you have already told your world of these things, then why were my people given the visions? Why were we sent here? This excursion has been a waste. All that we risked, for nothing.
I believe that your prophets were shown what they were so that you would come here.
Explain.
Lindsay, you want to do this part for me, please?
Sure. You see, May, while Joseph put all of this before the eyes of the world, no one believed a word of it. They all think he's a liar. They think these stories are fiction, falsehoods. Even what we're doing here, me recording our words on this little device, it will all be thought a lie by everyone who hears it.
But your coming here may be what changes their minds, what makes people believe it's all true. Those who have seen you and your companions flying about our city, they know you're real. They will know this story is real. If only there was a way to do this on a larger scale, beyond just the podcast, so that everyone could know. But what would that be?
We can't exactly hold a press conference with them, can we? Not with Heartland security prowling about.
Of whom do you speak?
The bad guys Joseph was just telling you about.
The Cabal.
They go by many names. One of them is Heartland security. They've been hunting for you guys since you came through the portal. Which, do you have the orb with you?
We do not. We could not chance it falling into enemy hands. We opened the doorway on our world, then stepped through to yours.
Yeah, we figured as much.
So in order to get back, someone will have to open the portal from the other side?
At the appointed time and place, yes.
When is this rendezvous? You guys have been here for months.
It is very soon, and thankfully so. We depleted the last of our supplies days ago.
What's become of our manners, Joseph? We have company and we haven't even offered them anything.
You guys hungry? Oh man, I make an amazing grilled cheese sandwich with pepperoni and pickle chips, and you don't know what any of that is, but you will love it, I promise.
Before he got breakfast going for our guests, Joseph made a pot of extra strong coffee for he and I. The pair of us had been up all night, he with his vigil, me with my show, and neither of us were going to sleep just yet, not with extraterrestrials to host. Like a short order cook, Joseph stood flipping sandwiches at his stove as I guided the strangers into the kitchenette. I gestured to the table and invited them to sit. Maevalesse translated for her companions. Each of them took a chair, but then turned it around backward before straddling it. The human furniture did not accommodate the steepled wings of our guests. I then pulled bottles of water from the fridge and dispensed them. The strangers smiled their gratitude. I grinned in return, but my face fell into a frown when I saw a bandage around the arm of the other female. I hadn't noticed that before, nor the hole in one of the male's wings, or a tear in the surcoat of the other. I sidled over to Joseph, keeping my voice low.
Did you notice their...
I did.
What's it from?
My guess? People have been shooting at them.
They come here to help us, and this is the thanks they get? Are we even worth saving?
Lindsay, you can't think that way.
Work?
They're just gonna have to do without me.
Will they fire you?
Let them. I have slightly bigger things going on.
But you need this job.
Yes, I know. And it was kind of a hard job to land, actually.
It doesn't usually take you long, right? Maybe you should just go and hurry back.
Maybe. I don't know. Would you be okay here alone?
Yeah, I'll be fine.
Can you finish this for me?
Of course. Go.
Okay, I'll be back as soon as I can.
I replaced Joseph at the stove and finished breakfast. Maevalesse extended her thanks and that of her companions before they ate. But not just to me. They seemed to give a prayer of some kind. I thought that rather odd. I guess I hadn't thought about aliens having some kind of faith. I wondered about it, but didn't question them, not with the inevitable sleepiness coming on. I poured myself a cup of coffee and went with it to the library, settling back into my armchair. I took a few sips, but it was too little, too late. I don't recall nodding off, just waking up. I peered around groggily, seeing that the strangers had joined me in the library but were huddled together on the other side of it, having a quiet conversation among themselves. When they saw me sit up and blink, they fell silent. In my hazy state, I was immediately suspicious, even alarmed, but it occurred to me that the strangers were not being secretive. They had been whispering merely as a courtesy to their sleeping hostess. After all, I did not speak their language. They could have said anything, at any volume, and it would have easily eluded me. The recorder lay in my lap, having its own rest, but if I had to be up, so did it.
Where's Joseph?
He has not yet returned.
I put a hand to my mug. It was still a little warm. I hadn't been out for that long. I checked my phone, which I'd earlier set to silent for obvious reasons. There was a missed call from Sylvia. It was strange that she would have tried me so early in the day. This is typically when both of us would have been dead to the world. I stood and returned to the kitchenette, pouring my tepid coffee into the sink, then fixing myself a fresh cup. I sat down at the table and phoned Sylvia.
Sorry to wake you.
It's fine. I'm not getting much sleep today. What's up?
We may have a problem. Management wants to sit down with us next week.
Like a real in-person meeting?
Yeah.
We haven't had one of those in ever.
Right? I think this might be the end of the road, Lindsay.
What do you mean?
The numbers came in. We're sagging in the ratings again.
What? No, we rebounded.
We managed to get our heads above water. Now it looks like we're going under again. We lost 2 more advertisers for our time slot.
I'm sorry, Sylvia. I can't deal with this right now.
Well, guess what? You have to. If we don't find a way to improve the ratings, the higher-ups are going to step in. That means either retooling the show or worse. They cancel it. Then we're all out of a job.
I bet Ray Cadera never had this problem. Why can't they just leave us alone?
Can you meet me somewhere? We need to figure this out.
I'm sorry, Sylvia. I'm in the middle of something here. I can't get away.
In the middle of what? What do you have going on that's more important? The podcast? If there's no radio show, there's no podcast. You understand that, right? We need the station, too.
I know all this, Sylvia. I get it. Believe me, I get it. And when you hear the recordings I'm making, you'll understand why I can't tear myself away right now. Don't worry about station management. I'll think of something, okay? I'll fix this. Listen, I gotta go. Call you later.
Fine.
Troubles?
Huh? Oh, nothing. Don't worry about it.
You can tell me.
It's just life stuff. Trust me, it doesn't even compare to your worries. I'm sorry, by the way, for what you and your people have had to endure. You've been running and hiding the whole time you've been here, attacked and hunted by the very people you're trying to save.
Gentry told us what we could expect from his world.
And now you understand why he never returned. Tell me about your world, May. What's life like over there? Simpler, I bet.
Simpler, yes. There is less nuance on my world. Your civilization is contradictory to all that I know. Your people live what is, to me, confusing lives. Having spent so much time here, I fear that, well, it would be unkind to say.
Please, I won't be offended. Take whatever shots you want at humanity. It won't be worse than anything I've said myself.
I worry that my own world will look like this someday, that my people will turn out like yours. Apologies, that was rude.
That's fair, but you probably don't have much to worry about. Unlike humans, it sounds like Ariels have it all pretty well figured out.
I am not wholly an Ariel, as Gentry calls them, but am what he refers to as an amalgam.
An amalgam? Like a mixture? What do you mean?
I am half Ariel, half human.
Then I knew why Maevalesse seemed different from her companions. Why her eyes were not as bright in their glow. Why her wings were not as intense in their color. This also explained, to me anyway, how her grasp on a human language seemed more perfect than it should have been for an alien. She went on to tell me that as an amalgam, she was not capable of true flight. The Ariels apparently have hollow bones and lesser muscle density than humans, which enables them to take to the air at will, whereas amalgams can merely glide. However, an amalgam's human side made them far stronger than an Ariel. I also learned that Maevalesse had not been selected for the mission to Earth in spite of her amalgam heritage, but because of it. Being half human, her body type was more conducive to our planet. This was also why she had been made leader of the expedition. The thinking was that she could better relate to and empathize with the people of Earth.
Gentry himself asked me to lead this mission.
He sounds like a big deal over there.
Humans were known only as enemies until he came into our world. He fought against his own kind, and is now greatly revered. He was an outsider who earned his place of prominence.
Why do I feel like you're aspiring to the same?
I suppose that I am. Amalgams have not always been well regarded on my world. If your man has Gentry's manuscript, then he's likely told you this already.
Joseph is not my man, and we actually hadn't discussed the amalgams yet. So please tell me.
The first of your kind to come to my world lived among us in peace for a time. The Atlanteans.
Like the terms Ariel and amalgam, Atlantean is just a substitute designation. That's what we've been calling them, even though that's not really what they were. You're referring to the first advanced human civilization that possessed the artifact in ancient times and used it to travel to your world.
Yes. Why are you...
Oh, sorry. It's called recapping. I do that for the audience.
We are alone here.
But I'm recording, remember? It will be listened to later by many people on my world.
Of course.
Anyway, so the Atlanteans pretended to be the Ariel's friends, but then they tried to take over. Joseph did tell me that much.
The Atlanteans deceived many Ariels into joining them, so that when the humans and their giant masters were defeated, many natives of my world went with them into exile.
So that's when Ariels and humans started getting together?
Yes. The first of the amalgams were bred for war, trained to be soldiers. I was to have been one of them.
Whoa.
I was still a youngling when Gentry and the Ariels brought an end to the conflict. I, along with many other amalgams, were either orphaned or abandoned by what remained of the enemy. In their mercy, the Ariels took us in, raised us as their own.
But there are still Ariels who see you as the enemy?
We are a product of the Great Betrayal, what began a generations-long war. Our presence is a constant reminder of it.
So is that why you're here? You're trying to prove yourself?
It no longer matters. I've spoken with my fellows, and it is agreed that our mission is now complete, even if it was not what we thought. If it is as your man says, if our presence here will improve the believability of the story, then our time on Earth was not spent in vain, and now we must go.
He's not my... Never mind, doesn't matter.
Are all the women of this world so willfully blind to matters of the heart?
Well, let's work on getting you home, shall we?
Speaking of homecomings, Joseph made his own just then, pushing slowly through the door and shutting it quietly behind him. There was something wrong. I heard it in his voice when he called my name. I rose abruptly from the table, excusing myself from Maevalesse as I went into the library. The Ariels looked to us with worry, their glowing eyes flashing with each blink. They, too, knew something was wrong with my partner. Like I said, it was in his tone. Joseph glanced from our visitors to Maevalesse, who'd followed after me. We all stood there expectantly, but Joseph said nothing, just waved me to the bookcase that was also a secret door. The strangers startled when it swung open and remained behind as he and I descended into the basement. Not until we were alone did he speak.
She's dead.
What? Who's dead?
Our informant. They killed her.
Whoa, hang on. How do you know she's dead?
Because I just pulled her body out of a bathtub. They made it look like an accidental OD, but she wasn't using anymore.
Joseph, how do you...
My job. I work for a mortuary service. I'm on call for body removal and transportation.
That's what you've been doing?
It's why I get pulled away at all times of the day and night, and why I always have to go immediately.
The collared shirt, the tie. You have to dress up.
Usually I keep my nice clothes in the truck so I can... Hey, wait, how did you know about that?
I wasn't snooping. You left them in your backpack, which you sent home with me the other day.
Right.
So what happened?
This morning I was called to that motel, the one mentioned on your show last night.
That's what Heartland Security was doing there. They were staging her body.
And where better than some garbage motel?
But why? And how did they find her? We haven't even released a single episode yet. No one knows we interviewed her except Sylvia. Wait, you don't think?
No, I think it's my fault.
How so?
Because I took us directly from the interview to the foundry. Maybe after our run-in with Five Coat, he and all of his goons retraced our steps and picked up her trail from there. I don't know for sure what happened. But what I do know is that she was wrong.
To keep her identity a secret?
It was her anonymity that got her killed. She was a safe target. No one knew who she was, so her sudden death wouldn't be connected to any of this. I'm convinced now more than ever that putting ourselves in the public eye was the smartest thing to do. I'd go so far as to say it's why we're both still alive.
But why kill her? She already sent us the video. It's damage done.
She's the reason we ended up at the foundry. Five Coat played it cool on the day, but I'm guessing that he and his employers were none too happy that you and I, of all people, found out about them and the trap they'd laid for the Strangels. That's why they took her out. And it was dumb luck that we even discovered it.
Because of your secret job. But didn't they know you worked for a mortuary service? They followed you home the other day.
It's likely that they do, but not that it would be me called to the scene. I mean, what are the odds?
Oh man, this is getting really scary.
We cannot let Heather have died for nothing.
There is her name. Not much point in trying to hide it any longer. In fact, it is now essential to reveal her identity, so that everyone knows the truth of this brave young woman. For those who will, no doubt, overlook a pictureless obituary buried in the back of the Circle City Chronicle, Heather Langdon was a tragic figure deserving of more than she received. During our interview with Heather, she disclosed to us that she struggled with an opioid addiction, but was trying to get herself clean. It was actually to make a purchase of said drugs that had her near the old iron foundry that night. But after witnessing what she did, Heather had vowed to walk the straight path. However, even though Joseph and I know the truth, we will never be able to prove that she did not accidentally overdose in that motel. The Cabal, as they are wont to do, used her unfortunate circumstances to conveniently murder her. I feel sick just saying it. I also feel responsible. I wanted so badly to speak with the person who shot the footage of the portal opening, and it ultimately cost that person her life. We could not let the Cabal steal any more lives. Speaking of which, Joseph and I glanced up to see Maevalesse and her companions coming down the stairs. They knew we'd gone to the basement to speak privately, but could not ignore the urgency they must have heard in our voices. Besides, this had everything to do with them now.
We have to get these people home before Heartland finds them.
Absolutely.
What is happening?
The rendezvous you spoke of, where is it?
The doorway will appear just where it did before, and soon.
I was afraid you'd say that.
Why did you plan it like that?
Remember, Lindsay, where the orb is activated on one world corresponds to where it will open on the other.
Yes, we had to keep to the same point of ingress so that our companions on the other side would know where to open it for our egress.
Well, dang.
What is the issue here?
You can't go back there. They have the whole area surrounded. We've been there, we know. They'll see you coming from a mile away.
They'll capture and probably torture you for information about your world. And when the portal does open, they'll storm through and seize the orb, taking control of it. And then they will use it to invade your world.
How can this be? How do they know where we came through?
They have a device. It tracks the opening and closing of the wormhole, the portal. They set up camp around that old building shortly after you journeyed to Earth. They know the orb hasn't been used again, so they also know that it must still be on the other world. They've surmised your plan to rendezvous where you started. They just don't know when.
And neither do we. May, when are you supposed to go back?
Tomorrow.
Wait, what?
You said soon. That's like, really soon.
We have completed our task here, but now you tell me that we cannot return? We must. We cannot remain here. It is too dangerous for us.
We understand that. I promise we'll figure something out. We will get you home, even if we have to fight our way in there.
But we have no weapons. Recall, we came in peace.
Well, you're not going to leave peacefully. I'll be right back.
Joseph darted swiftly up the stairs, but then lumbered cumbersomely back down a couple of minutes later. In his arms was the crate that he kept in the back of his pickup truck. He set it down heavily on the floor and kicked it open.
I assume you guys are at least a little familiar with these?
My partner dispensed the contents of the crate, which, as you'll recall from Season 1, was a variety of antiquated weaponry he, for whatever reason, had purchased from a pawn shop. It was from this very crate that Joseph's gauntlets and my bacillard had come, and now they did so again. Joseph handed me the scabbard, and I drew the blade from within. I hadn't held this thing since the Battle of Shady Hollow. I looked to our guests. The Strangels, coming from a world where these implements were still the norm, took them up in hands already proficient in their uses. They wielded them about expertly. It was impressive, but it wouldn't be enough.
Joseph, this isn't... These worked last time, but not now. I hate to admit it, but Five Coat was right. Heartland Security are highly trained operatives. With guns. If we bust in there all Chronicles of Narnia style, they're going to shoot us down.
Yeah, you're right. We'll need a distraction.
What kind of distraction?
I have an idea, but I don't like it.
Joseph went to the vault, dialing in the combination and spinning the wheel. Then he dragged the massive door open. The Strangels and I looked on as he stepped inside. From one of the hundreds of safety deposit boxes, he took an old transceiver. Joseph returned from the vault, leaving the door open behind him. His eyes were on the device he held, his thoughts on the consequences of its use. Recall, listener, that in Season 1, Detective Sorrells had carried this transceiver. We'd later learned that it functioned on a single specific frequency, what was a direct line to Hardesty. Also recall, Sorrells had given this to Joseph and I before we entered the Shady Hollow Wildlife Sanctuary. Well, when the dust had settled that night, the Unclosing Eye Detective Agency had made a hasty exit, leaving the transceiver behind. Joseph had grabbed it, but asked that I leave the fact unrecorded. The Cabal, as Hardesty predicted, would be on the hunt for him once the podcast was released, once they'd learned that he was not only alive, but working against them. And the transceiver, if designed to communicate with him alone, could theoretically be used to trace his location. So obviously, we'd not revealed that we had it, until now. Joseph switched it on and extended the antenna.
We should probably destroy this thing once we're done with it.
Joseph, no. We can't ask them to come out of hiding.
We're not. I just need a favor from the man who invented the PX-39. Dr. Hardesty, are you there? Hello? Dr. Hardesty, I'm sorry to call, but I really need to talk to you.
What's the range on that thing? We don't even know if they're still in the city.
We might have to go to the roof.
Heck, is that you?
Yes, I'm here. Don't say where you are. Don't say where you are. We can't be too careful. We've been under surveillance.
By the Cabal?
Yes, but they're operating under the guise of a government agency now. You know the one I'm referring to.
The Department of Heartland Security has been formed, so it has begun. They have set the board while the pieces are moving.
It seems too soon, doesn't it?
Then is now, Herr Leck.
Again with the Dreamcatcher.
Okay, let's get into it. We've danced around the Dreamcatcher long enough. But be warned, listener, this is going to get complicated. For that reason, we've avoided discussing it on the podcast as to not further convolute an already deeply convoluted story. But since it keeps coming up, we might as well address the Dreamcatcher now, and this does seem to be the most appropriate time, so to speak. The listener is well aware that my partner collected and published a series of stories in the years leading up to his acquisition of the Pendergast manuscripts. Back in Season 1, you also heard me briefly refer to the last of those publications as containing the information I needed to track him down at the old bank. Remember that. It'll be important later. As you heard Joseph trying to explain to Maevalesse earlier, this particular story is unique among the others, as it takes place in the future. I'm going to do my best to relate this to you in the same way it's related in the story. Here we go. The device was one of the Cabal's more ambitious projects. Many scientists over many years contributed to the initiative, what was codenamed, obviously, the Dreamcatcher. This machine was conceived by the Cabal after they had lost their most valuable asset, their time traveler, Clarence Grindle. In short, the secret society sought to replicate his powers artificially. Now, before you go envisioning some kind of time machine, don't bother. As we discussed in Season 1, such a craft is impossible. You cannot send anything physical backward in time. Grindle's spirit made the journey, but how do you replicate a spirit? The closest they could get was a series of particles that could be encoded with information. The Dreamcatcher, like Joseph was saying, is a device that, in order to be understood, must be thought of in the plural, its present self and future self. This is what it does. Its future self records information, then attaches that information to tachyon particles, which are not bound to the same rules of time that other particles are. Apparently. Don't ask me how that works, I don't understand a lick of this stuff. Anyway, the Dreamcatcher then transmits these particles to itself in the past. Well, it's not even really transmitting. It's more just storing them, and because of quantum mechanics, the information is made available to its past self. Again, don't ask me how it works. Upon completion of the Dreamcatcher device, there were those within the Cabal who realized just how dangerous such a thing was. Maevalesse had described this kind of technology as blasphemy. She was not alone in this opinion. Instead of destroying it, however, these defectors kept the Dreamcatcher to use against their former masters. Like Hardesty and Pendergast before them, this group set to frustrate the plans of the Cabal. Joseph suspects it was this lot who sent him the story in question, and that they did so in an effort to lay bare the plot of the secret society. The only real way to hurt them is to shine a light on their secret doings. But the story stirred no more public outcry than the Pendergast books did. The story will take place here in Circle City, and extensively outlines a nefarious conspiracy the Cabal has in the works. That clearing of the way Joseph described for their nearing overlords. Exactly what these plans are or the nature of the coming catastrophe will have to wait for later. I apologize, but to get into it now would be to lengthen this episode by another hour or more. But this story is available to anyone interested in reading it. You can find the future tale in the companion book to this podcast, The Endless Elsewhere Volume 1. And as you heard last episode, Joseph, now more than ever, could use your business. Anyway, what I have said so far has been to prepare you for this next bit. Our good friend Dr. Hardesty is actually featured in this story from the future, and in it, he tells the narrator about the Dreamcatcher and where to find it. Hardesty will want this man to send his story back in time in the hopes that Hardesty's younger self will hear it and change the past, thereby altering the future. This will fail, by the way, but what's interesting and most relevant to us right now is where Hardesty says the Dreamcatcher can be found, in the vault of the Circle City Collector. Hardesty even will know, the combination to the vault door, suggesting some amount of trust, even partnership with its owner, with Joseph. This story was how my partner first learned that he and Hardesty were destined to unite. So now the listener better understands the gravity of that first meeting between the two in Season 1. But this story is also how Joseph and I came together. Reading it, I learned that the man I sought for this podcast, the Circle City Collector, lived in what was once a bank. This was how I tracked him down last spring, and, well, you know the rest from there. But it gets even crazier than that. In the story from the future, the narrator states that he found not only the Dreamcatcher in Joseph's vault, but a t-shirt as well. A t-shirt with a motto on it, a simple adage, a maxim which is not all that poetic and a little derivative. The narrator recorded this motto as part of his story, which then became part of my story since I borrowed it for this podcast. That thing we say at the end of every episode? It came from the future, but it also came from me. I'm the one who thought it would be a good idea to start putting the slogan on t-shirts. I gave one to Joseph at the end of season 1 as we both stood in his vault, and there he left it, knowing that someday it would be found by a man in the future who'd send the motto back in time. As I was learning, the past determines the future, but the future also determines the past. Mind blown. Oh, and I apologize, because the head-spinning time travel talk isn't quite over yet.
Reading the story, I came to realize that I will not be able to change the future any more than I could the past. Yet when the time comes, I will still make the attempt. In your publication, you speculated that you were without choice in putting it into print, as the man I will send to your vault found a published version of it there already. You and I have done our parts to maintain the cycle.
Hardesty, you've got to help me out here. I am not following.
The future, or the glimpse of it that we have been given, must occur exactly as it is written. The two must stay synced with one another. If they do not remain in concert, the resulting cacophony could mean the end of all we know. I apologize, Herr Leck. When first we met, you asked me about all of this, but I deflected because I knew you would not like my answers. You must understand I am uniquely suited to observe all of these events, as I have, am, and will continue to be present for them. Because of this, I must ensure that they all occur, even the worst, most disastrous parts.
But why?
Because if these things do not come to pass, wretched as they are, something far worse will happen. In the publication, you speculated and were later confirmed that if a person were to journey back in time, as Grindel did, the continuity would be disrupted, even split, causing a tangential reality. But if mere information is sent back, all it does is fix those events on the timeline, mandating them to happen, yeah? Whatever we learn of the future then becomes preordained. This is the paradox created by the Dreamcatcher. It becomes absolutely imperative that whatever is said to happen does so. If it does not,
It would be like breaking the will of God.
Say what?
Prophecy is history that simply hasn't happened yet.
our reality, as well as the original from which it branched, are both weakened because of Grindel's meddling, yeah? If we do not maintain the timeline, both universes could collapse upon themselves.
Hardesty, you said last time that if we just stopped Grindel before he made another jump, we'd keep all this from happening.
Ah, Miss Mallyn, good to speak with you again. You are correct, that is what I said, but it was not the complete truth. Stopping Grindel was only half of our task, the noble half. The next part will be decidedly ignoble, but it must be done for the greater good.
Are you saying we're just supposed to sit back and let disaster befall this city? To let people die?
Nein, it is worse even than that. I'm saying we may have to take active measures to ensure that this cataclysm happens, Herr Leck. That we could, in fact, be responsible for it.
No, this isn't right. We are not going to do that, Hardesty.
But you already have, Herr Leck.
Excuse me?
You speculated within the story that while it was intended to expose them, it only served to inform the Cabal of their future plans. Could even be the source of them, the blueprint.
So our coming here was not to prevent the catastrophe, but to ensure it's happening?
Who is that speaking?
That's Maevalesse. She and her friends are the reason I'm calling. I'm sure you and the others listened to the podcast when it came out, right? So you know about the portal opening and the visitors from another world? Well, they're here with us now, and we vowed to help them get home.
Joseph quickly caught Hardesty up on the situation and our need for a diversion. The Cabal was using Hardesty's old machine to track the wormholes, but we had the inventor himself. Joseph then explained his idea.
You wish for me to create a false signal that will draw the Cabal away from this rendezvous point, yeah?
Yes, exactly. Is it doable?
Recreating the gravitational signature of a wormhole is impossible, Herr Leck. The energy involved is unlike anything we can replicate artificially.
But can you make even the smallest signal? Enough to register on the PX-39, enough to confuse them, even if only briefly. We just need a narrow window, that's all it will take to get these people home.
After she'd uttered what she had, Maevalesse wandered into the vault. As Joseph and Hardesty continued to hammer out the plan, I moved to join her. I found the Strangel gazing up at Grindel's painting of the orb, the ancient artifact that she'd used to come to our world.
We're going to get you home, whatever it takes.
For doing this, I pledge to you and your man that in your hour of need, I and others will return to assist you.
Thanks? But you really don't have to. How will you even know we need help from your world?
We trust that another vision will be sent to us.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I may know how to send a false beacon. It could be enough for the PX-39 to detect, but whether it is strong enough to deceive the Cabal is unknown. Even if it does, it will not take them long to realize the ruse, and once they have, the Cabal will make a swift return to your location, Herr Leck.
Once we get all of them through the portal, Lindsay and I will be out of there before Heartland shows up.
Very well. When is this rendezvous?
Yeah, about that. A little bit of short notice here. It's actually tomorrow.
The exact time, Herr Leck. You will have to plan this down to the minute.
I don't actually know. Hang on. Maevalesse, when is the doorway to reopen?
Your world and ours very nearly mirror one another in length of day, but differ in points. So what is noonday for us is for you
Midnight, Hardesty. So if you can send the signal slightly before that, we should have enough time. We'll be watching from a safe distance. Once the Cabal clears out, we'll head in.
I shall do my best.
Midnight. Of course it's midnight.
What, Lindsay? Oh, right. Of course. Sorry. It looks like you're gonna have to call off work for another one of these season finales, huh?
No, not this time. In fact, unless I'm very much mistaken, I might just have the best show of my career.
Do good, fight evil, repeat. I'm Lindsay Mallyn, and this is the Endless Elsewhere podcast.